Does taping help for runner's knee and specifically for patellofemoral pain? So before we get into taping, let's just explain what we're talking about here. So runner's knee is kind of an umbrella term for knee pain with running, and it's most often used to refer to something called patellofemoral pain. So patellofemoral pain, it sounds kind of fancy, but it's like pain coming from behind the kneecap. So it's usually felt as a kind of vague pain generally in the front of the knee, or sometimes runners will describe it actually feels like the pain is behind my kneecap. And that's because it's the back of the kneecap that's actually hurting. So the kneecap is called the patella, and the thigh bone is called the femur. And the joint between them is called the patellofemoral joint. So when you get pain on the back of that kneecap, they call it patellofemoral pain. Now, taping is often used to help with patellofemoral pain. Now, patellofemoral pain is very common in runners, and taping, whether you're using the old school rigid stiff tape that's usually kind of a flesh color and it's very stiff, or you're using like the more modern K-tape, which is like stretchy and usually more colorful. Either strategy we're going to talk about today. And there's various different taping techniques using either the old school rigid stuff or the K-tape, the stretchy stuff. All of them are designed for one purpose, which is to try and reduce pain from patellofemoral pain so that people can run more and do their strength exercises, their rehab more easily. So how are these taping strategies used with patellofemoral pain or with runner's knee? So what I used to do when I worked like in the clinic as a physio is a runner would come in and say, I have knee pain when I'm running. It feels like pain behind my kneecap. We'd do some tests. If I determined that it was patellofemoral pain, I would put some taping on before and after doing a little painful test. So the painful test might be, if they had pain in the left knee, I'd get them to hop on their left leg 5 times. They'd say that hurts. It's a 4 out of 10. Then I get them to hop on the right leg and it didn't hurt at all. And then I'd put the tape on, whether it's the old school rigid tape or the K-tape. I actually preferred the K-tape. It was a little easier to manage. And then I get them to do that hopping test again. And they'd say, oh, that feels better. It's like a 1 out of 10, or I don't feel it at all. And it's like, great. Okay, so we can use that. And then I give them a video that like showed them how to do it themselves. And then whenever they went for a run or they were going to do their strength exercises for rehab, they would use the taping to reduce the pain to make the whole process a little bit easier. But if the runner got up and did the test again after we put the tape on and they were like, oh, it still hurts just the same, 5 out of 10, I'd be like, okay, well, it doesn't really work for you, so let's just focus on the other things. So it's essentially like an extra thing, or what they call in the rehab space an adjunct, that you can add to someone's rehabilitation, and it'll sometimes make the whole process a little bit easier. Now, when it comes to the evidence that's been looking at whether these taping strategies are effective in helping runners with knee pain, it's quite mixed. And overall, because they've done so much of it over the years, more so on the like rigid taping, but they've done some in recent years on the stretchy K taping too. But overall, the reviews that have been done, and there's been a few of them, they come to pretty much the same conclusion, which is, okay, the evidence is mixed, but it would seem that it's helpful if you do it in addition to a more comprehensive rehab strategy. So a typical example of one of these reviews will be this one that was done by Logan in 2017. And they, after reviewing all of the research, found like, yeah, it does seem when you use taping strategies that they reduce pain with running from patellofemoral pain, but it only seems to help when they're also doing like exercises and technique work and all this other stuff. And if you just do it on its own, it doesn't seem to do anything. Now, research like that, we actually have to take with a bit of a pinch of salt because it's quite open to kind of placebo effects. And the reason that is there's a lot of studies that are done in this design of A versus A plus B. And what I mean by that is like group A might get exercises and group B get exercises plus taping. So they get 2 things. And what often happens in these type of study designs is the group that got 2 things do better, no matter what the 2 things are. And this is often used to falsely attribute effect to things that are actually not very effective. And a lot of the research on taping falls victim to this kind of design. So we want to take it with a big pinch of salt, because the other thing could be anything. It could be literally like, like singing chants or something like that. Like any extra thing will usually improve the treatment effect just through various like placebo effects. Now, that being said, the reason that I'm not specifically against taping, even though the evidence for it isn't great, is that the downsides are pretty minimal. In fact, I would go as far as to say they're almost non-existent. So if you find it helpful and you do it, great. And if you don't find it helpful, don't do it and don't worry about it too much. The one downside that I have seen consistently that I really don't like is often you'll meet a runner who's still taping their knee like 10 years after having an episode of knee pain because they believe that they need to do that to like keep it in position or something because they were sort of given some guidance to that effect, which is not correct. And now they're kind of stuck feeling like they need to put tape on for the rest of their life. And that adds to this kind of perception that they are fragile, that their knee can't handle running without like tape. And this just isn't the case. So if you are one of those runners who had knee pain a long time ago and still wears tape, even though your knee doesn't hurt, you can feel free to stop. And like I say, with the evidence on taping, it does seem to be relatively symptom focused. It reduces the pain a little bit in the short term, only when added to a more comprehensive rehab strategy. So we only ever want to add this into our focus on the fundamentals, which is our 3 critical components. So if you have runner's knee, patellofemoral pain, you want to be building the muscles, strengthening the structures, and refining the technique. And I have lots of other episodes where I talk about that. But in addition to those fundamentals, which are really going to get to the root of the problem and fix it, you can also use taping to reduce the pain a bit temporarily and make that whole process a bit easier. And the nice thing here is that it doesn't really seem to matter from the evidence that we have whether you use rigid old school taping or the new fancy K taping. It doesn't seem to matter whether you pull the kneecap one way or the other, or up or down. It doesn't seem to matter what technique you use in terms of the taping, whether you make it into a nice pretty X pattern or you like do a little V or whatever. It doesn't seem to matter. All that matters is that when you do that little test retest, so you do like a squat or you hop up and down or you run for a couple of minutes and you feel a bit of pain and then you put your tape on, and then if it feels better, then what you did is fine. And it doesn't seem to be that there's like one technique that is loads better than all of the others. So I'll put a link in the description to a YouTube video that I send to clients all the time from the guys at the running clinic, because Blaise Dubois, one of the physios in there, he demonstrates a technique that I just quite like and I've found reliable. It's not really any better than any other. I just like it. And it's something to give people to say, like, rather than, oh, do whatever you want. It's like, do this. So if you want a technique, I use the K taping, the stretching taping, more often than the rigid taping, just because practically when you try it, it is easier to manage. It tends to stay on for 1 or 2 days. It doesn't peel off as easier, and it tends to feel more comfortable than the rigid taping, but the rigid taping is also fine. And there's lots of videos online that can show you how to do taping techniques, either with the rigid taping. McConnell taping is a very common one. If you want to Google that, McConnell. That's a common one, or any K taping technique that is designed for patellofemoral pain, and just try it and see if it helps. And then once you get over your knee pain and back to full training, discard the tape. You don't need it anymore. It's okay. It's just a temporary measure. It's like taking a painkiller or taking cough medicine when you have a cough, right? Like it's just something you do for a little while and then you don't need it anymore. And if you are like stuck and doing this helps a bit, but doesn't get you back to running again, and you've been having trouble with like runner's knee or patellofemoral pain for a while, you're going to need a more comprehensive rehab strategy, right? So if you're not getting anywhere with what you're doing and you want to talk to us, as always, click the link in the description and we'll have a chat and see if we can help you. But otherwise, yeah, try out the taping in the description and see if it works for you.